Um, Good evening and welcome everyone to the Art Deco Society UK's August webinar with speaker Douglas Mackenzie. And the talk is entitled Bucharest, a Crumbling Art Deco Treasure Trove. I'm Ruthie Good, I'm the events coordinator at the Art Deco Society UK. And I'll introduce Douglas in a moment, but first I'll just recap our usual house rules and some information for you. So firstly, auto-generated captions. If you need those, just click on the CC Live transcription button on your screen and then click on Show Subtitles. Next, a reminder that this is a webinar format, different from a normal Zoom meeting. So we can't see or hear you at home. So feel free to sit back and relax. Finally, to remind you that a question and answer session will take place at the end of the talk. So please put any questions or comments relating to the talk in the Q&A section on your screen, and then we can put all your questions to Douglas at the end. You can do this at any point during the talk, and we will we'll register them and then ask at the end. So don't worry about whether you're asking a question and it's flashing up. It won't. We'll just collate them at the end and then put them to Douglas. You can also use the chat function to share any thoughts or raise any issues that you might have with sound or video. Our chair of the Art Deco Society UK, Lucy, is here in the background to help with any technical problems. As always, please be respectful with all of your questions and comments. That's it for house rules. So now we can move on to what we've all been waiting for. I'm very pleased to introduce tonight's speaker, Douglas Mackenzie. Douglas was born in or near Aberdeen, and after much travelling, he's lived in Bucharest on and off for the last 10 years. He's worked extensively on historical and cultural heritage projects, and his writing has covered a wide range of topics, including digital museums, historical immigration, early golf club making, and architecture. COVID pandemic offered him an opportunity to explore the city of Bucharest, which he felt was crumbling around him. And the result was a book published by Humanitas. It was released at the Bucharest Book Fest in May this year. And it was called Before They Fall, Modernism and Art Deco in Bucharest. So far, it's only available in a Romanian edition. The title of Douglas's talk for us is Bucharest, a Crumbling Art Deco Treasure Trove. Douglas will explore the underappreciated architectural hodgepodge of Bucharest, unappreciated not only in the West, but also sadly by its own politicians. Douglas will discuss the reasons why the renovation of Art Deco buildings in Bucharest has been neglected, and he'll illustrate Bucharest's Art Deco heritage with some of its highlights and lowlights. This is against the backdrop of walking the streets of Bucharest to document 600 or so buildings. Sorry. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the webinar. And now it's over to Douglas. So Douglas, would you please turn on your camera?
It is on, is it not?
I can see you, Douglas.
Okay, good. Well, buonasera, bine ați venit la Bucharest. I thought I'd give you the traditional Eurovision Song Contest greeting because Romania was so hacked off with getting nul point. It didn't enter this year. I don't know if it will return. So, good evening and welcome to Bucharest. Although it's virtual, I'm cheating tonight. I'm actually in Aberdeen at the moment. And it was in Aberdeen last year. I went on a society walk, and conversation came up that I lived in Bucharest, and somebody said to me, "Oh, you'll not see much Art Deco there then," which made me very pleased that I was writing a book about the rich treasure trove of Art Deco, which is to be seen in the city. As I said, as Ruthie said in her introduction, not that well known. So I was very pleased that the Society produced an article on the website saying "Around Every Corner," written by Lachlan Finlayson. Now, I've never met Lachlan, we've never spoken. I understand he's in the audience tonight, so I'm going to apologise for over familiarisation when I say that I'm just going to refer to it as Lachlan's article, like we're bosom buddies. And because it was used in the advertising for this talk, I've addressed a few of the buildings that he mentioned in the article. So this is the book. As Ruthie said, only in Romanian, so still illustrated. I actually miscounted. There are more than 700. There are more than 700 buildings included in it. And as she said, it was from walking the streets, all the streets, because you read the tourist guidebooks, and the university also has students have produced very interesting trails of architects, but they all tend to be around the centre of Bucharest. And to me, the wonder of the place is that in the roughest areas where they tell you not to go, you find Art Deco. In the new suburbs where things have been flattened, you still find Art Deco buildings on corner sites. And the two things about the book, which I hope will inform what I'm saying tonight, there have been quite a lot of books produced on Art Deco in Romanian, of the glory of the 1930s, of what it looked like. And I wanted to do an as is, not an as was, because it's a young country or young population in Romania. They don't particularly relate to the past, even with history. And going back to Lachlan's article, he said, there are a lot of people interested in the preservation of Art Deco in the city. Well, I think I'm a half full glass kind of guy. Lachlan clearly is a half full kind of glass with another 6 cases in the cellar, because that optimism is great, but I've found there's really very little interest other than from specialists in preservation, and it's a shame. So one hook possibly I could hang my interest in preservation on is that this was a real flowering in Romania. After the First World War, Romania gained a lot of land. The settlement of Trianon, it got a bit of Black Sea coast. It was suddenly a really confident new country, booming industry with oil and with grain, and this flowering of architecture of Art Deco and modernism with influences from all over Europe where the architects had studied is there. And I thought, well, okay, maybe this is a hook for preservation, not in a tub-thumping nationalist make Romania great again type of way, but this is what the country was. Come on, the future can have something like this as well. But as I say, there's this antipathy to history. Anything which is old is dismissed as communist. Amazing the things that I've seen thrown out. I had fairly young neighbours who had beautiful wooden bench, hand carved in Maramuresh, probably around 1850. Old communist. Now, wait a minute, it's 2 years after the Communist Manifesto was published and 20 years before Lenin was born. Whatever, out. And then comes something from from IKEA. So I know you all love Art Deco, so you have to suspend that for a little bit tonight and realize that I'm looking for other hooks for getting people interested in preserving buildings in the city. But importantly, the book does not try to do that. I'm absolutely aware that this is Romania's patrimony, not mine. And I don't want to be the annoying old woman in the supermarket who comes over to you when your kids are misbehaving and say, "Oh, when my kids were young, this is what I did." It's purely showing what's there and then letting people make their mind up whether it's worth saving. But for people interested in Art Deco, there is so much to see in the city. So please come. And if you come, you're probably going to arrive at the airport. Most people come by plane, and then you have the option of taxi and Uber into town, and they tend to go down two main highways. So what will you see on the way? Well, actually, if it's your first time in Bucharest, you might not see anything at all. You'll have your eyes covered with your hands because of it takes a bit of getting used to taxi drivers in Bucharest and the speed that they drive at, particularly on this highway. So if you come in on Boulevard Kiselev, you might see through the trees buildings like this one. This was designed by Marcel Herman Iancu, as he's called in Romania, better known as Marcel Iancu in the West. Who was not just an architect. He is most famous for his time at the Cabaret Voltaire in Zurich and being one of the founders of Dadaism. So he was involved in painting and publishing magazines as well as the architecture. So this villa was produced for a wealthy pharmacist, typical of Iancu in that it also involved sculpture, and there was a statue in the grounds done by the Romanian sculptress Milica Petrascu, who he worked with on many of his buildings. Latterly, this was the residence of the Venezuelan ambassador who disappeared, and at the same time so did the statue in the garden, which is quite a common Bucharest kind of thing to happen. If you take the other route into the city, the Aviator Boulevard, you'll see it dominated by this figure, the monument to the heroes of the air, produced between 1930 and 1935 by Lydia Kotzebue, a Russian-born sculptress who made the first model for it, and Josef Fekete, I may have mispronounced his surname, Hungarian name, Joe Black in English, which commemorates the Romanian airmen who lost their lives in the First World War, plus the pioneers of aviation in Romania, like Aro Vlaicu. I, in my more cynical days, think that it's a perfect symbol for the restoration of architecture in Bucharest. And it's got his wings stretched out, but never takes off. And you'll see some examples of that later. I also have to throw in a factoid. You can't mention this statue without the thing that everybody knows, even in the Romanian National Dictionary of Biography, that the model was based on the boxer Joe Louis. This is such a well-known fact, and I think personally it's absolute nonsense, because this was finished in 1935, and Joe Louis's career as a professional only started in 1934. But you know, as I say, it's in all the guidebooks. As you continue along, you'll come to various Art Deco buildings, and importantly, I read somewhere somebody writing about Bucharest that, oh, there was a particularly Romanian style of Art Deco, and that's all there is. nonsense. There is absolutely every kind of Art Deco building you can imagine. This is a particularly nice one, very well maintained. It's called the Haret Popovic House. Popovic was an engineer, and this was built for him by Mircea Cerenbach. So if you've been to Bucharest before, or if you come, you'll almost certainly take the tour to Sinaia and to Peleș Castle, which shorthand I would say is the Romanian Balmoral. And if you look up in the hills there, there's a hotel called the Kota 1400. It's 1400 meters up in the mountain, and that was Cerenbach's most famous building. But this is a very nice villa that he's built on the way into Bucharest. Only when you leave the leafy boulevard do you start to see that things are not really as they could be with Art Deco. So this building I caught in evening light, which makes it look quite attractive, although all sorts of weird and wonderful things built onto it. Very nice Art Deco door, but when you look at it in a grayer light, you can see these sort of B&Q type additions to it, how it's crumbling. And the sign at the front of the building there says, "Beware of falling masonry," and they've just kind of isolated and built roads around it. So it's a warning of pedestrians being run over by cars. Pedestrians are not a protected species in Bucharest, I might add. So be careful when you're wandering about. And this is in the streets called Lasca Catargiu, which is just a perfect example of Bucharest and all the different styles. Lasca Catargiu was the only conservative politician elected prime minister in Romania, and he's standing there in front of a really, really ugly communist bloc. But there's lots of Art Deco. There's Neo-Romanian, which is the style of 1890s to early 1900s, which predominantly Ion Mincu, who founded the architecture school, had come back from Paris and had decided to take 17th century Romanian architecture and put a new twist on it. There's also a lot of very nice Art Nouveau in this street. I don't know where the story came from that Art Nouveau was not allowed in Bucharest. It's also some of the best restored buildings in the city. So the South Korean embassy in this street and the Cantacuzino Palace in another bit. Very fine examples of Art Deco. Only 100 meters from this really shabby building is this. This is a small modernist terrace of 3 houses. The last one is the most Art Deco of them. They were designed by Virginia Haret, and the last one with this ladder window and the Art Deco ironwork was the one that she lived in. Why is it important? Well, if you listen to some Romanian sources, she was the first woman architect in the world. That's patently not true. I mean, you can go back a couple of centuries and find both French and English female architects, but she probably was the first architect, the first woman to gain an architecture degree anywhere in the world. So a very important part of Romania's cultural history, and you can see it is not in a very good state at all. If you don't take the Uber or the taxi into town and follow the advice of the city, saying the quickest way into town is on the new train, which takes you to Gare du Nord, you will come to this station. Or you can, if you've got a lot of time, it's very attractive to travel to Bucharest by train from other parts of Europe. Not terribly fast, but you can enjoy the scenery. and you arrive at a main station in a city and you step out, what do you expect to see? Well, for me, it's a great railway hotel. So the Tokyo Station Hotel, the Barclay at Grand Central in New York, St Pancras in London, Balmoral in Edinburgh, and once upon a time in Bucharest, that was also the case. So I don't know why this is. Hotels in Bucharest seem to be built in pairs, even though there's no connection between them. So on one side of the street was this hotel, which was initially called the Hotel Dunăre, and this one on the other side, which was called the Hotel Duna. This one, the Hotel Duna, was badly damaged in an earthquake in 1940, and a lot of the Art Deco stuff, to use the architectural term, from the top was lost. And when the communists came to power, the first building I showed you, they converted it to accommodation apartments where people still live, and they moved the name Hotel Dunăre to this one. So this was a hotel, and along the bottom of it, elderly ladies tell me that during communist times, the department store Sora was where you went for your party frock for special occasions. As you can see, it's not in a very good state. It was further damaged in the 1977 earthquake, and if being damaged and neglected is not bad enough for buildings in Bucharest, the indignity is that many of them find themselves being used as advertising hoardings, as here. There are some undoubtedly beautiful, or were beautiful, Art Deco features in it with the glass and with this door, but it had been left to crumble after the earthquake, after the revolution. It fell into the ownership, I don't know the whole story of it, of an Israeli businessman in Hong Kong. He tried to sell it in 2008 after the financial crash. There were no takers. Then in 2016, he announced he was going to convert it into luxury apartments. And because it's a listed building, Category 2, he needed permission from the Ministry of Culture to do that. And they didn't say no, and they didn't say yes. And that's kind of a typical way that things go in Bucharest and in Romania. So nothing has happened, and it's got worse and worse. So I was very pleased to read in January, February of this year, and please note this was an election year for Romania for mayors, that the mayor of Sector 1, I'll explain the relevance of sectors later, a very nice French lady, Clotilde Armand, had said that the building would be reappropriated by the state. It would be completely renovated and turned into a civic centre, which is great. And I thought, that somehow sounds familiar to me. And so I searched back, and I found that also in 2022, almost exactly the same press release went out as to what was going to happen to the building. And of course, nothing has happened. And this is not an isolated event. It has happened for much of the city's history. So if we go back to the Gare du Nord, it started its life in 1871 as the Gara Târgoviște. Târgoviște is a town southwest Romania which had a line into a railway line into Bucharest. And then in 1883, it was announced that the Orient Express would be calling regularly in Bucharest. So they decided, well, we need a better station. And so they decided to have an architectural competition to see what should be built. So this actually happened 10 years later, in 1893, speed has never been a particularly hot topic for Romanian railways, particularly when it comes to the trains. And the competition was won by a French architect, Alexandre Marcel. Good news. However, they then found out that they had no money to build it, and nor did they have the land to site it on. So they stuck on, kind of as a kid would do with Lego, at right angles to the existing building, ticket hall. And things rolled on, and then they decided in 1911 they would have another go at a new station, and they asked a local architect called Victor Ștefănescu for a design, and he produced, from the pictures, something that looks really great. It looks not unlike the Saarinen masterpiece in Helsinki. Guess what? Nothing happened. Then World War I came, and they made a few ad hoc changes to the station. Then by 1930, they'd given up totally on the idea of building a new station, and they got back to Ștefănescu and said, "Can you spruce up what we've got?" So he was working in an Art Deco style by this time, and my old English teacher used to berate me for making nouns into verbs, although it seems to be all the rage at the moment. So he Art Decoed the place. I think the polite architectural term is that he applied an Art Deco vocabulary to it. So you see those wings at the top. He, they're in more detail on a corner piece as well with the wings. He removed the old clock tower and put in this new one. He removed the old columns, and there are some nice details, like these doors. And then he put this monstrous gazebo at the front where the taxis stand. So it's not an Art Deco masterpiece, not by any stretch of the imagination. It's a hodgepodge. Can't blame Ștefănescu, and he must have been thrilled to get the contract after waiting for 19 years. But architecturally, a bit of a dog's dinner, And for all that, I love the Gare du Nord because it's been the start of many journeys of adventure. It's a place I come home to. It's been a place where I've met family coming from the overnight train from Bucharest, which is supposed to get in early in the morning, and often it's near lunchtime. And that is what's important to people about architecture. It's the stories, it's the memories. And that's a story I want to develop as we go on. The station is on a street called Calea Griviței, which is a very long street. It runs from the station to Calea Victoriei, which, if you look at the old photographs of Bucharest, was one of the streets of Europe in its heyday. I mean, still quite a glamorous street with Gucci showrooms and so on. It's our shopping street. It's Regent Street, it's Fifth Avenue, and you can see it just in the background here. So it's about 50 meters away, yet we have this Art Deco building in this condition, so close to our prime shopping street. So why is that? Why has this happened? Well, there are a bunch of reasons. As most of you will be aware, that 1930s buildings throughout Europe were not of the highest quality, so they are high maintenance. So somebody looking at it, might be tempted to say, well, we'll just pull it down and build something new there. Of course, I mean, Calea Griviței has almost 100 listed buildings in it, so you can't just go straight ahead and do that. But as everywhere, there is corruption. There may be politicians who stand to gain from it financially, or there'll be many cases of mysterious fires, or building very close to where I live, the local Roma were encouraged to take things out of the building for their own use, so it would eventually fall down. So that happens everywhere. That's not just Bucharest. Then there's the structure of the city. I referred to a sector of the city. The city is divided up like a pizza into these slices, which is great because it means that every sector has a little bit of the center, as well as its outlying area, and each of these sectors has its own mayor and council, and then there's an overall mayor for the whole city, which is great, but it then limits the amount of money the sectors have to spend. And of course, if you're saying, well, this is a benefit to the whole city, then there's a bun fight amongst the different sectors saying, well, we want this and we want that. So that's a specifically Bucharest thing. Then there's the issue of ownership. When the communists came to power, they nationalized most of the buildings. And in the case of private housing, they would come in and say, awful big area you've got here for two people, half a big ducat for just twa doos, as we say in Scotland. And they'll say, we're moving 10 people in here. You can stay if you like, but Harry Potter style, you're going to live in the cupboard under the stairs. And of course, when the revolution came in '89, after that, there was a chance for people to get their building back, either theirs or their families, their ancestors, and that was fine. Initially, the Romanian government said, okay, we'll leave this open for 10 years for you to make the claim. And then the European Court of Justice said, no, you can't time limit this. It's got to be open in perpetuity. Well, that meant that people were very reluctant to take on buildings like this because they might spend a lot of money on it, and then somebody says, well, this was Grandpa's house, it's mine now, off you toddle. And there's also been a lot of fraud with people showing that they have title to a building and selling it on, and then it's discovered that the title was fraudulent. And this isn't just for the gullible. Our own president, Klaus Johannes, was tricked this way in his hometown of Sibiu. And then there is another force of nature which you are limited in what you can do to mitigate it, and that is earthquakes. So I mentioned with relation to the hotel, the earthquake in 1940, which had damaged it, and again in 1977. And the earthquake risk can be summed up by this, which was on the cover of my book as basically a symbol for the city. It's saying that this building is at class 1 seismic risk of earthquakes. So you can't get finance for the building. If you've bought it, you can't get insurance. There isn't enough money in the city, probably in the country, to go around making all of these buildings safe. So it's got to be a case of pick and choose what you try to save. And I'm a little surprised at the choice of the hotel as a place for Sector 1 to try and salvage. This is the Cinema Marconi, which is about 150 meters the other way from the station, also featured in Lachlan's article, and I think it's in worse state than when he photographed it. This photograph I did in June. There's now a sign on it, for sale, listed building class 2, in need of total renovation. No irony in that. This was the roof when I photographed it in June. It was in the middle of a heat wave where it was 40+ degrees in Bucharest, and this caused a lot of thunderstorms and torrential rain. And I was there just 2 weeks later with a television crew, and I think that the place looked even worse. But what happened to it was it was in use as a cinema, and then there was a huge amount of wrangling in trying to get it back after the revolution. There were in fact 16 years of argument about the ownership of it, during which time it just became an unofficial shelter for homeless people. To me, this is the kind of building that you might think of saving. I don't know actually if this one is even possible to save it, but supposing it were, because it's a place of memories. Oh, I went on my first date to that cinema. I met my husband there. Oh, when we were kids, our parents always took us there at Christmas time. And I think of my experience in Aberdeen, and those of you who know the city know we have fantastic Art Deco swimming baths there, the Bonaccord baths, and neglected by the council and falling down until a charity, local people, took an interest in it and have started working on restoring it. And people who are not interested in Art Deco, maybe not even interested in architecture, are interested in this. So when there are polls locally for where should this organization give its money, Bonaccord Bath so frequently wins, because I remember I went there as a student on a Friday night because it was a cheap date. I am an Aberdonian after all. I swam competitively in it. When I moved back to the city in 2007, I used to go to the early morning sessions there just before they closed it down permanently. So it's these places where there are memories which are both worthy of renovation and saving, and also which inspire ordinary people to think, yes, this is something important to our culture. And on this sad building, the Cinema Dacia, as it was in its last existence from the 1960s, the Russians had named it Alexander Popov on the basis that he invented radio. I don't know, in the 60s they realized that actually radio transmission was invented by James Bowman Lindsay and Arbroath, but that's a different story. But see, it's not just the superstructure which is gone. Very typical of Art Deco in Bucharest are these classical friezes. So on this side, the 3 or 4 panels, there's just this little bit in the corner of the first one which exists. And on the other side, this is the only one which remains. I do kind of wonder about it for a cinema. You take the kids there and say, oh, well, did you enjoy the Disney film? Yeah, it was lovely. What's that, Dad? Oh, well, that's Death on his charger. And I'm not sure. Maybe it's Hecate roaming the night with her dogs, or maybe it's the Hellhounds to stop you escaping from the underworld. Anyway, we'll go back home now, and you have a good sleep in your bed. Perhaps not quite in keeping, but typical of the classical touch to buildings in the city. And cinemas have been particularly badly served by reconstruction or lack of it in the city. So this one on the left is the Scala, which was designed by Jean Monda, who certainly should be recognized more internationally. He did four cinemas in the city, but also a lot of residential buildings. This one at the top here is in Boulevard Regina Elisabeta, Queen Elizabeth, which was referred to as the Romanian Hollywood. There were so many cinemas there, but they have all been left to rot. And this little Art Deco one, the Lina, I've included that because it's in a place where the outskirts in the poorer area, where none of the books tell you to go and look for Art Deco. The Scala, this is it in its heyday. It was by the second of the architects in Romania who have international fame, Rudolf Frenkel. I'm not suggesting he was Romanian, of course. He was German, but he fled the Nazis to come to Bucharest, and then he had to flee the Romanian Nazis and went to London and ultimately to Ohio. It was very badly damaged in the 1977 earthquake, and nothing has been done. So there's the sign, and then this is the state it is in the right hand side there. And possibly the only place in my book where I stopped being descriptive and was outraged was the Arrow building. This was originally for an insurance company, built 1930, 1931 by Horia Kranga, who would be the third Romanian architect with an international reputation. This is the first modernist public building in the country. Looks not too bad there, which was a couple of years ago at a distance. But when you get into it, the cinema was built slightly later in 1934 and operated from 1935 with concerts and cinema, and went until 2015, when after the nightclub fire, safety was tightened up and buildings with seismic risk were not allowed to operate a business on the ground floor. But it is just in a horrible state, and it's a building of not just significance to Romania, it's of European cultural significance, a real tragedy. And it's owned by the city, who say, oh, well, we've no money to do anything with it. So, enough misery. I'm not saying for you to come to Bucharest to see things which are all falling down. Come and take a look at attractive things. So this is in a quite fancy area of the city, Dorobans. This is the villa of Praga, Emil Praga, a giant figure in Romanian civil engineering. He worked with all the great architects on their buildings, and then he chose Kulina, who did many of the hotels, to build his mansion for himself. He was still going strong, Emil Praga, in 1982 at the age of 94, winning the Romanian Academy Prize for his book Reinforced Concrete in Romania. So this is a great building, a little difficult to photograph these days because it's now the Syrian embassy, so I had quite a few security guards bearing down on me when I was taking pictures of it. This could be a symbol of the city. This is the Union Hotel, now the Union Business Centre. Has been very, very nicely restored. It's a very typical feature of Art Deco in Bucharest, with the fact that it looks like a skyscraper, but it's only 7 stories. And that technique is used over and over again throughout the city on villas and on public buildings. So this was damaged in the bombing of 1944, but has been nicely restored. And not quite as good, but okay. On the other side of the street is another Art Deco hotel. This Institute of Magistracy was originally built, as you see, between 1929 and 1932 as the headquarters of the Association of Veterinary Doctors, then became the Ministry of Justice, and now the Magistrate's Place. So a lot of Art Deco plaque work, which is very common in designs in the city. And see also those eagle wings, which were on the Gare du Nord as well. Said, you know, not particular areas, but if you walk down Boulevard Dacia, there are a whole array of beautiful buildings. This one, quite well preserved, again by Jean Monde, who I said should be recognised more internationally, and another way of emphasising the height with this ladder window in it. The Aziron building was originally built as the headquarters for insurance, for the national insurance of Romania. 1937, during the communist times, it was converted to a hotel, and now it's back. Aziron is an insurance company once again, so their headquarters with many nice forums on it. This may be one of the jewels, Arcub. This was originally the Civil Servants Union Club. So I had, for example, a barber shop in it and a bowling alley in the basement. So now it's a cultural heritage organisation, Arcub, run from here. They also have an exhibition space. Of course, there are other cultural heritage societies, and there's a great deal of jealousy among them, but the building is fantastic, and beautiful ironwork details on it in Art Deco style. And this, I love this little building because, again, it's in a very poor part of town where taxi drivers say you don't want to go there, it's too dangerous. Was the maternity hospital, unused, but still looks pretty good nick, and the M for maternity on the door. It did become the headquarters for a freezer company now called Arctic. So they did keep the style, and they put the A's on the windows there in the same style as it used to be M's. Now owned by a Turkish electrics company. I don't have time to go into the old Jewish district because I want to leave time for questions. But it's certainly an area worth exploring, and maybe will come up in the questions. So I don't know how we do this. Do I hand back to you, Ruthie, to let the questions roll?
Yeah, I'm back. Thank you. Thank you very much. That was really fascinating, actually. There's a couple of things that struck me. Firstly, I love your emotional connection to the Gare du Nord, despite it maybe not being the best example of Art Deco. And also to the baths where you had your first date. In the light of this, I'm wondering, are there any groups dedicated to the preservation of Art Deco in Bucharest at the moment? For example, the Union Hotel was restored. Is there anything else sort of ongoing?
There are things which are being restored. They tend to be commercial. There's a strange. I mean, I talked about the antipathy to history and things old. There's also a strange. I can't call it strange. Different. You know, we associate buildings with people, and because that person who lived there was famous, then the building is worth keeping. You know, at Burns Cottage in Alloway. So, for example, Mircea Eliade, who is probably the leading cultural figure in the 20th century and latter 20th century in Romania, lived in a massive building, which is quite stunning Art Deco. they put a plaque on it, but they also put the earthquake warning on it, and so nothing has happened with it. Cornelio Capozzo, the leading figure of opposition to the communists, spent a long time in jail, lived in a great Art Deco house, which again they put a plaque on it, and the house was falling down. Now that has been restored, and you think, well, that's great, but it's a commercial company which has done it. They've kind of just plastered on the plaster, painted it bright white, and have opened two of the rooms in it to the Scott Fitzgerald or the Great Gatsby experience, which is a bit tacky to say the least. So it's a bit ad hoc the way that renovation takes place. And think of the Jewish quarter, which has hundreds and hundreds of buildings. Many of them are occupied by squatters. So you can't rely on homeowners to do the renovations. It's probably even too much for the Romanian government, but some of these things, certainly the Jewish quarter, is of international significance. And I would like to see it becoming a UNESCO site, of a World Heritage site at some point. And say, well, take, corrupting the MasterCard slogan, patrimony is priceless for everything else. There are European funds, so really would like to see that take off in Bucharest. But there's of course, there are architects at the architecture school who are are very keen and do what they can, but there's no real organized body that I know of.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We have a question from Emma. She says, I really like your idea of Art Deco buildings as keepers of community memories as a way of engaging local communities with their Art Deco buildings. Good luck with your book, Douglas. Then she goes on to say, if Art Deco gets more international media pickup in 2025 with the centenary of the exposition, do you think that would have any impact for the buildings of Bucharest?
Yeah, I hope so. Certainly something which is uppermost in my mind. But there's a difficulty, because with the memory, and that's why it works for public buildings, because no matter what happened, people went there. You think of the Jewish quarter. It's not a case of my great grandfather built this house and the family's been there ever since. First of all, Romania sent more people to concentration camps than any other country bar Germany, so that caused an exodus, and of course people fleeing from the Jewish quarter. So there's not the continuity of stories. They also suffered from what they call the Hiroshima, when the money donated for the 1977 earthquake went to Ceausescu, and he decided to build the parliament and the roads leading to it, and demolished a large part of the Jewish quarter. And there are difficulties in Romania with Jewish history, which you can kind of understand. We lived 45 years under communism, and now you're picking on us for 5 years of madness, which happened in the past. But I think they're scared to tackle the Jewish quarter for that reason. So if you follow the history of the Holocaust memorial in Romania, it was just dragging people bit by bit towards it. So there are difficulties. I think it's easier to do with the public buildings than it is to do with the private ones.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Douglas Lachlan has posted a question. He says, great talk, thank you. I enjoyed visiting Bellu Cemetery. Could you comment of local interest in Art Deco features in similar places?
Well, I don't know that there's similar to Bellu. Bellu is the great cemetery for all the great and good in Bucharest. And again, you're like the city. There are all kinds of different architectural styles in it, including including Art Deco, and famous people, novelists, aviators, scientists, politicians are buried there, which is great. Places which are different. Rahova, that's where the maternity hospital was. I love Rahova. It's a working class district which was hammered by the communists, pulling things down and putting up apartment blocks for the workers when they brought them in from the country and saying we have to urbanize. But there's still great Art Deco buildings that you can spot there, and also there's a quite surprising development. They call the Romanian translation into English for it is lotismo, a very good English word, but it is based on the English Garden City approach. So that's and lots of Art Deco and modernism in there. So that's a place to explore off the beaten track as well.
Okay, thank you. We have lots of questions, so hopefully we can be quite quick answering them because we don't want to run over time too much. Duncan says, do we know how much or if any Art Deco was lost for the construction of the Palace of Parliament?
Yes, it was. I mean, not just Art Deco, but synagogues, fabulous historic hospital. Because it's not just, I mean, the Parliament is big enough, as you know, second largest building in the world, but then it's also the streets up to it which were demolished. So the answer is a lot.
Okay. Helen would like to know, do any of the well-renovated Art Deco buildings have Art Deco interiors?
Yes, they do. And even some of the non-well renovated ones still have Art Deco interiors. If you search on the web, oh gosh, the guy's name is going completely out of my head, but he searched for tours in architectural tours in Romania. The guy who runs them has photographed quite a few of the interiors.
Okay, I'm sure a quick Google would be enlightening.
Indeed, yeah.
Emma has come back to say, she posted the first question. She said, This has been fascinating and enlightening, Douglas. Thank you so much. Lachlan has also said, apart from Bucharest, are there any other cities or areas of Romania you would recommend visiting?
Well, if you like, for architecture, if you like Art Nouveau, then Oradea is almost entirely Art Nouveau. So that was Hungary until the First World War. Romania got it back, lost it again in the Second World War, then regained it. So yeah, it's well worth visiting architecturally.
What was the name of that place?
Oradea, Oradeea.
Okay, thank you. Helen is asking, would you say now is a good time to visit Bucharest for sighting?
It's always a good time to visit Bucharest because it's a great city. Just be careful; it's starting to cool off a little bit. It was in the 40s in July, and it's now down to the low 30s, which is still above the safe operating temperature of a Scotsman. But the going into the autumn, last year in October it was 27 degrees when I was there, so it's always a good time.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Lachlan has asked, and also I was going to ask this, any plans for digital or English version of your book?
Well, I would love it. So, if there are any English language publishers in the audience, meet me in the foyer afterwards and I'll buy you an ice cream. So yeah, I would love to publish. I'd love to publish an English version. Typically, Humanitas do produce ebooks, So that may well be available. And okay, it's in Romania, but there are over 700 pictures. So, I mean, you get a pretty good idea, and you can soon use Google Translate for the captions and ignore the text if you want to.
Okay, so thank you so much, Douglas, for a really, really interesting talk. Thank you for all your questions. I think everyone really enjoyed that. If anyone would like to re-watch tonight's webinar, you'll all be sent a link in a day or so to see it on Vimeo. We hope to see you on the 12th of September for Dive In Part 2. Part 1 was back in May and consisted of 4 short talks about swimming and the Lido. There was so much to explore around this that we're having Part 2 next month. It will follow the same format with 4 further speakers who will talk to us about different aspects of this theme. Please follow us on social media and you'll see more details about this and also our other upcoming events. As mentioned, Dive In Part 2, and then a spooky themed talk for Halloween month in October. We're on Instagram and X under the name Art Deco Sock UK. And you can find us on Facebook by searching Art Deco Society UK. And of course, there's a lot of information on our website, including how to become a member. All our events are open for priority booking for members for 48 hours before going on general release. So it's really worth becoming a member. So good night from everyone at the Art Deco Society UK. Thank you once again, Douglas, for that talk. It was really inspiring, and I think a few of us, or quite a lot of us, will now be thinking about going to Bucharest. I hope lots of you will join us again in September. Enjoy the rest of the summer. Thank you and good night.
Thank you for your organising.
Thank you, Douglas. Thank you.